We begin tonight with Winston Peters and his pension. What we know, thanks to work done by our colleagues at Newsroom, is that he was overpaid superannuation. He's repaid the overpayment plus undisclosed costs. Tonight, Checkpoint can confirm that for at least some of the period involved, he was paid a single person's pension that he wasn't entitled to because he was in a de facto relationship. How and why did he get a single person's pension? I asked Mr. Peters exactly that. Why were you receiving the single person's pension?
I don't know. I turned up and made an application with my partner, but a very senior person at MSD, and they gave me advice as to what I'd get. I'm not the absolute expert on these sorts of things, but I thought it was about right because it looked much lower than the standard, and they apparently gave me one rung too high, and as a consequence, it wasn't discovered.
So you were receiving the single person's pension when you weren't in fact a single person?
and hadn't said I was. That's the point. And more importantly, though, there's a slight complication, but there's no use going into it now because back then I was completing annual IRD returns, and so that's a complication, but it's not worth going into because it just makes people go glazed-eyed, frankly.
Give it a go. I promise my eyes won't glaze. Can you explain what happened?
Well, it is possible the rate was different then and it's different the next couple of 2 or 3 years. I don't know. I wasn't interested when I was told that they had paid an overpayment to me. I was so shocked and aghast at the whole thing. I stopped off my life, got on a plane and came to Auckland to see the person who had contacted me as urgently as I could.
Whose fault was it?
Fixed it up.
Whose fault was it that you were...
We couldn't work that out. Now, look, I've given that answer to your countless colleagues. I said we sat down and tried to work out how do we make this mistake. I have to tell you that it's not rare at all, but as a consequence, we decided we couldn't discover where the fault lay. There was an answer which seems to have been ruled out, even though the answer was given. And so the mistake may have been there, but we don't know.
How long did it happen for? How long were you given the single person's pension for when you weren't in fact a single person?
Well, that's the point. We are not too certain about that because you've got, as the accountant just pointed out to me, IRD matters at the time. But then I later returned to Parliament, you recall, and things would have changed.
Wait a sec. What I do know, and this is not in dispute, is that you have refunded some money, right?
They have set the amount that was overpaid and the attendant interest and what have you that go with these sorts of things.
Okay, so if they have set the amount...
They never gave me the figure and I didn't ask for it because I said, I just want to know what is the sum of money that I can redeem this matter and get rid of it.
Okay. When they set the amount that you were overpaid, that would have been a very simple calculation. How long you received the single person's benefit for when you weren't eligible for it?
Now, that sounds pretty logical, doesn't it? But
really?
Yeah, it does. But at no point have I been given all the calculations. I didn't ask for it. I said, I want you to make the number one job that you've got here on this case to finalise what you think the total amount is, interest on top of that, and send me the information.
So you are telling me, and therefore our audience, that you repaid a sum of money without asking for a breakdown of what it was made up of?
Precisely.
And is that remotely plausible, with all due respect?
Well, what matters is not whether it's plausible, but whether it's true.
So how much did you repay?
Now, that's between me and MSD. But I'm reading a 3-sentence letter here thanking me for making the payment, writing to confirm that the overpayment has been paid in full, and considering the matter to be closed. That's the final letter I got.
Were there penalty fees?
I assume so, but I don't know.
And if you weren't at fault, why are there penalties?
No, it's not a matter of question of whether one's at fault. Penalties apply whether you're at fault or not. What happens is that frequently people pay up and then they contest whether who's at fault.
Are you going to do that?
That's the reality of it all.
Are you going to do that?
Well, look, this only happened a matter of within this month. This letter I've got here is dated early August. Now, as a consequence, I haven't had time to stop off, and also, I might add, you've got 3 months to do that, and I had not even considered it because, frankly, I'm flat out, as you will appreciate.
Absolutely, I do. It's an election campaign, so let's absolutely accept that on the record. And you work incredibly hard. But what you are telling us is you have repaid a sum of money that you are not prepared to disclose, made up of components that you don't know about, without appealing it and without forensically examining what you were paying and why.
The last two statements about not examining it and not appealing it are in the potential future, because one has 3 months in that circumstance. But given this, what I was doing, I'm around the country on a bus, I'm flat to the boards, and I didn't have time to stop at all but to make sure the matter was paid under my instruction.
Who do you think's behind this?
Oh, it's political, make no bones about it, but, you know, it's highly likely to rebound. I'll deal with it when I've got time, but at the moment I'm flat to the boards, getting on with the campaign.
So can we review what we've learnt so far? You have repaid the money that MSD required you to pay?
Yes.
You were receiving...
And within 24 hours of them giving me the figure, yes.
You were receiving single person's pension you weren't entitled to?
Well, for part of it, it sounds like it.
You don't know...
For the full part, I didn't bother to make an inquiry to that. I said, you will know what the details. You work them out for me, please. Let me know, and I'll be very grateful to you.
And you have repaid the money without knowing what it's made up of?
I know what it's made up of in terms of its componentry. As to the amount of its componentry, I don't know, which is a complication, frankly, that's getting too serious for me, let alone your audience, no doubt.
Winston Peters, we will have more on this from our political editor, Jane Patterson, later in the program.